Morning arrived slowly, heavy, as if even the sun hesitated to climb. Wind swept across the dry fields, carrying the smell of scorched grass and old manure, sliding along the dirt road that curved toward town. Far off, a windmill turned one reluctant circle at a time, each rotation releasing an aged creak, like the sigh of something that had existed too long without being noticed. At the bend in the road stood a broken fence post. The wood had been bleached pale by years of sun, split along the grain, the kind of thing someone once meant to fix and never did. It didn't hide anything. It didn't shelter anything. It stood exactly where anyone passing would have to see it. Mara Henson was tied to it. Less than 200 yards behind her stood her husband's house. Low roof, closed door. The barn quiet. No sign of life except the windmill, still insisting it was doing its job. Rope cinched tight around her wrists and waist. New rope. Clean, unfrayed. Knots neat and deliberate, tied by hands that hadn't shaken or rushed. Her dress was torn and dirty, streaked with dust and sweat, but the round swell of her pregnant belly beneath it could not be hidden. It drew the eye so completely it was hard to look anywhere else. She had not been abandoned. She had been displayed. Mara opened her eyes at the sound of hooves striking earth, not the frantic rhythm of someone fleeing or chasing. These were slow, heavy, even steps, as if the horse itself knew to slow down before the rider understood why. Silas Crow saw her before he understood what he was seeing. He had traveled this road more times than he could count, into town, out of town, hauling hides, buying salt, sending letters. Never once, along this familiar stretch, had there been anything so exposed, so wrong. Wrong enough that his horse stopped on its own. Leather creaked softly. Silas didn't dismount right away. He stayed where he was for one measured breath, his eyes fixed on the rope, on the swollen belly, on the terrible distance between the woman tied there and the house behind her. Mara shifted slightly, her head tipped to one side, forehead resting against the wood, her lips parted. "Don't," she said. Her voice was rough, low, not a cry for help. It was the voice of someone who already knew that screaming wouldn't change a thing. "Please, don't make it worse." Silas dismounted. He moved carefully, as though any sudden motion might cause the whole thing to collapse. His boots hit the dry ground, gravel crunching far too loud in the stillness. He removed his hat and set it on the broken fence rail a few steps from her, close enough for her to see. "I'm not here to hurt you," he said. His voice was steady, not a promise, just a fact. Mara's gaze lifted, slid past him, and fixed on the house beyond the trees, as if the danger wasn't standing in front of her, but waiting in the place she knew best. Silas set his water canteen on the ground. He didn't hand it to her, just places it there, then stepped back half a pace. "No one in the house?" he asked, though he already knew the answer. Mara swallowed hard. "They're there," she said. "They just won't come out." Silas stepped closer. He studied the rope. This wasn't barn rope, not something grabbed in a fit of temper. This had been bought in town. He drew his knife. Mara's breath caught. "Don't," she whispered. He said, "I'm cutting the rope," Silas said. "Not you." He knelt beside the post. The blade slid carefully between rope and wood. No jerking. No letting the tension snap back. The rope resisted for a moment, then gave. When the knot came loose, Mara's arms dropped heavily. as if they'd forgotten what they were meant to do. She drew in a sharp breath, curling inward, one hand immediately going to her belly. Silas stepped back. His hands stayed open, empty. He didn't touch her. He waited. Wind moved across the road again, carrying the smell of dry grass and manure from the ranch behind them. The windmill groaned through another turn. Silas looked down at the rope on the ground. New, clean. Too clean for this. He scanned the dirt. Boot prints circled the post. Heels ground deep into the earth. Not the marks of the one who tied her, but of someone who stood there, watching. He straightened and looked toward the house. "What's your name?" he asked. Mara hesitated, then said it. "Mara." Silas nodded once. "Silas." She didn't answer. Her eyes stayed fixed behind him, waiting for a door that would never open. Silas slipped off his coat and laid it over the broken fence rail, close enough for her to reach. He didn't put it on her himself. Mara looked at the coat, hesitated, then pulled it around her shoulders. That mattered. "Can you stand?" Silas asked. She tried. Pain flashed across her face. She shook her head. Silas didn't lift her. Instead, he turned away, led his horse around, tied the reins. He pulled the wagon closer, spread a blanket across the wooden bed, then turned his back as she eased herself onto it. He gave her something people often forgot to leave behind: a choice. When it was done, he picked up the rope. Its roughness caught against his palm like a splinter. "Do you know why they left you here?" Silas asked. Mara looked down at her belly. "He said people needed to see," she said. "He said it would stop the rumors." Silas didn't ask who he was. He already knew. He climbed onto the wagon seat and gathered the reins. Before urging the horse forward, he glanced once more at the broken fence post. The rope still lay there, as if someone might come back for it at any moment. The wagon rolled on, slow, unhurried, as if it too didn't want to draw attention from the house behind them. Mara lay on the blanket, one hand on her belly, holding tight to the one thing no one could take from her. Silas watched the road ahead, but in his mind, the rope was still there, no longer wrapped around someone's wrists, but wound tight around his conscience. The light had climbed higher by then, but it brought no softness with it. The sun poured straight down onto the dirt road, turning the dust pale and ashy. The wind kept moving, carrying with it the familiar creak of the windmill behind the house, a sound repeated so often people forgot it was a warning that something was still turning, still watching. Silas didn't step forward right away. He stopped exactly 3 paces in front of her. Not closer, not farther. Far enough that if she startled, he wouldn't touch her. And close enough that if someone was watching from a distance, they couldn't say he was doing anything hidden. He removed his hat, didn't put it back on. He set it on the ground, directly in front of Mara, where the sunlight fell full on it. Slowly, deliberately, as if he wanted her to understand that he was here, without hiding, without sneaking. Mara swallowed. "Please," she whispered. Don't make this worse." Silas didn't answer right away. He bent down and placed his water bag beside the hat. He didn't lift it, didn't press it into her hand. He simply set it down and pulled his hand back, as though even offering it was a kind of intrusion. "Drink when you want," he said. Mara looked at the water, then at him. There was no gratitude in her eyes, only the caution of someone who had trusted the wrong people standing too close. "You don't have to do this," she said. "I haven't done anything. You're here. That's all." Silas lowered his gaze to the rope. Its color was still bright, new. The knots clean, tied properly. Not the work of a sudden rage. This was done by someone who had thought carefully before acting. He drew his knife. Mara flinched. The rope tightened. The fence post gave a faint creak. "Please," she said more quickly now, her voice so low it nearly broke. "Don't make everything worse." Silas stopped. "What do you think I'm going to do? You don't know what comes after." "I know enough." "No." She shook her head. "You don't. If you I cut the rope," Silas said. "Not you. That's not the problem. Then what is?" Mara fell silent. Her eyes slid toward the house behind him. The door remained closed. Not a single movement. "They'll come back," she said. "And when they see, they've already seen." "No," she said, shaking her head. "They'll see that someone interfered." Silas bent a little lower, not kneeling, just enough to bring the blade level with the rope. "I'm not interfering," he said. "I'm only removing something that shouldn't be here." "You've seen this before," Mara said. Not a question, a statement. Silas didn't look at her. "Enough to know," he replied. "And how did it end?" It didn't. The words fell between them, heavier than the rope itself. Silas set the blade against the fibers. He didn't jerk, didn't pull. He applied steady pressure, cutting strand by strand, so slowly that anyone watching might think he was hesitating. Mara closed her eyes. "Don't pull hard," she said. "I won't. Don't let it snap back. I've got it." The rope gave way. There was no sharp crack, just the sudden lightness that made her arms drop, numb and useless, as if they no longer belonged to her. She drew in a sharp breath. One hand went immediately to her belly. Silas stepped back half a pace. He didn't catch her, didn't touch her. "Not finished," he said. "The other one, I know." She trembled, not from the cold. "If I fall, I won't let you fall," Silas said. Then he paused. "But I won't hold you up if you can't stand." Mara opened her eyes and looked at him. For the first time, there was something there besides fear. "You're not like them," she said. Silas cut the remaining rope. Still slow, still careful. "I'm not trying to be like anyone," he replied. The rope fell to the ground. Silence. The wind passed through again. Behind them, the windmill groaned through another dry turn. Mara sat there free, but unmoving, as if her body hadn't yet caught up with what had just happened. "It's done," Silas said. "No." She shook her head. "Not yet." He looked at her. "It's not safe," she said. Silas looked toward the sealed house, then down the road. "I don't make promises," he said. "I don't save anyone." "Then why are you still here?" Silas picked up the rope, coiled it, held it in his hand. Its roughness clung to his skin. "Because there are things," he said slowly, "that if you turn your back on while they're still lying there, you don't get to pretend later that you never saw them." Mara looked at the rope in his hand. Then, for the first time since that morning, she nodded. The noon light fell without mercy. Dust hung in the air above the dirt road, pale and ashy. The wind kept blowing, steady, persistent, dragging with it the familiar creak of the windmill behind the house. A sound that had been there so long, people had stopped asking why it was still turning. Silas picked up the rope. It was heavier than it looked. The sharp scent of new hemp still clung to it, untouched by sweat or mud. He turned it slowly in his hands, the way a man reads a language not written in ink, but in intention. Bought in town. He knew it, before Mara opened her mouth. Still, he asked. "This rope," Silas said, his eyes never leaving the knot. "Do you know where it came from?" Mara leaned against the broken fence rail, both hands resting on her belly. She didn't look at the rope. "Town," she said. "Which store?" "Miller's." Silas nodded once. Miller sold good rope, load-bearing rope, the kind people bought when they wanted things done properly. "So it's not stable rope," he said. "No, not old rope. No, not something grabbed in a moment of anger." Mara shook her head. Silas crouched to study the ground around the post. Boot prints formed a rough circle, heels pressed deep, toes pointed toward Mara, then turned away. Signs of stopping, pacing, standing still, not just one person. "Someone stood here," he said. Mara didn't answer. "They didn't just pass by," Silas went on. "They stopped." "Yes, more than one." "No, they stayed long enough to leave marks." Mara gave a small nod. Silas looked toward the house behind them. Door closed, curtains drawn. No movement, no sound, a silence so complete it felt intentional. "That house," he said. "No one came out." "No. No one said anything." "No. No one told them to stop." Mara closed her eyes. "At first," she said, "I thought they would. And then I understood they didn't need to." Silas didn't ask why. He looked back at the rope. "If someone meant to kill you," he said slowly, "they wouldn't buy new rope." Mara opened her eyes. "And they wouldn't tie knots this clean," he continued. "They wouldn't put you where everyone could see. No, people kill in private, yes. But this," Silas lifted the rope slightly, "this was meant to be seen." Mara swallowed. "What did he say?" Silas asked. She didn't answer right away. She looked at the road, at the stretch of ground where people had stood, as if they were still there. "He said," she began softly, "that people needed to see." "See what?" "The consequences." "Of what?" "Of speaking." Silas said nothing. "He didn't want me dead," Mara went on. "He said that would be too easy. So he wanted you alive." "Yes, alive and watched." "Yes, watched, so others would learn." Mara nodded. Silas nudged the dust aside with the toe of his boot. Beneath it were more footprints. Smaller, maybe a woman's, maybe someone familiar. "They stood here and watched," he said, "and they learned exactly what they were meant to learn." "Yes, and none of them thought they were cruel." "No, they thought they were keeping order." "Yes, they thought silence was reasonable." "Yes." Silas tightened his grip on the rope. It was stiff, new, strong enough not to break, no matter how much she struggled. "Do you know what the worst part is?" he asked. Mara shook her head. "It's not the rope," Silas said. "It's that it didn't even need to hold you." "I don't understand." "It wasn't holding you," he said. "It was holding everyone else quiet." The words made Mara shudder. "I wasn't the first," she said, "and I won't be the last." Silas looked at her. "And tomorrow," he said, "when people pass by and you're no longer here, they'll remember," Mara finished, "and they'll speak less." Silas nodded. "That's why you picked up the rope," she said, "so it doesn't come back." "What will you do with it?" Silas looked at the coil in his hands, then at the road leading back to town. "Make sure no one uses it for the same purpose again." Mara let out a slow breath. You know, she said, I'm not afraid of being tied. Silas waited. I'm afraid of being watched, she went on, like a warning. Silas bent down and slid the rope into his saddlebag. You're not a warning, he said. You're a person. Mara didn't reply, but for the first time, her eyes left the house behind them. The windmill turned one more slow rotation. The road was still there, but the rope was not. The road back to Silas's ranch was narrow and long. No signs, no markers, only dry earth and low grass pressed it flat by the wind as if the land itself had learned how to bow. The last light of day slid sideways across it, fading bit by bit, until everything became layers of dull grey shapes stacked upon one another. The horse moved at an easy pace, not from exhaustion, but as if it understood there was nothing to hurry toward tonight. Each steady hoofbeat, iron brushing stone, soft and repeating, formed a rhythm that gave a person time to think, and no way to escape their own thoughts. Mara sat in the back of the wagon. She didn't ask where they were going, didn't ask how much farther. One hand rested on her belly, the other hung loose at her side, her gaze fixed ahead, where darkness was thickening in layers. No sudden drop, no warning. Silas remained silent until an oil lamp appeared in the distance, a single small glow, standing alone in a wide stretch of land. You can stay, he said, as calmly as if commenting on the weather. Not long, Mara nodded. Just tonight, Silas added. It's quiet here. She looked at him. How long does quiet last? Silas didn't turn back. His eyes stayed on the road ahead. Tonight, he said. Tonight is quiet. He climbed down first. He didn't offer his hand, but he stood close enough that if she slipped, he would be there. Not a gesture of tenderness, an act of decision. Mara stepped down slowly, carefully, like someone entering a place she wasn't sure she was allowed to remain. Inside the house there wasn't much. A wooden table, 2 chairs, a cold stove, no signs of a busy life. Nothing to suggest this place had ever witnessed a morning like the one she had survived. Silas set his bag on the table, poured water, placed the cup near her hand. He didn't slide it toward her, didn't invite her. Can you eat? He asked. If I need to, Mara said. Silas nodded, set bread on the table, then turned away. Night came quickly. The wind shifted, carrying the smell of damp grass and old wood. In the stable, a horse snorted softly. Small, alert sounds, but not panicked. Mara sat on the bed. She didn't lie down, didn't sleep. She just sat there, as if the moment she leaned back, everything would return. The post, the rope, the watching eyes. Silas stood on the porch. He didn't smoke. He only listened to the night. Then there was a sound, drifting from the direction of the stable. Soft. Not a horse. Silas tilted his head. Mara heard it too. Did you hear that? She asked. Yes. What is it? Not the wind. Silas stepped off the porch. No gun in his hand. No calling out. He walked straight toward the stable. Mara stood, stopped at the doorway. She didn't follow. But she didn't turn away either. The stable door was half closed. There was no one inside. The horses stood still, ears pricked, eyes wide. All of them were staring at the same place. The rope. It hung over a wooden beam, exactly where a horse would be tied. Not pulled tight, not hidden, just hanging there. straight, unmistakable, like a sign. New rope. Silas stepped inside, looked at it, didn't touch it right away. Mara stood a few steps behind him. "There's no one here," she said. "There was," Silas replied. "What do you think they want?" she asked. Silas reached out and touched the rope. The familiar feel, rough hemp, the scent of the store still clinging to it. "It wasn't me," Mara said quickly. "I didn't tell anyone." "I know." "Then who?" Silas lifted the rope from the beam, studied how it had been placed. Not a binding knot, a hanging loop, simple, visible. "Someone who wanted to be sure I understood," he said. "Understood what?" "That I saw." Mara wrapped her arms around her belly. "And they saw me too," she said. Silas nodded. "No one said anything," she went on, "but they came all the way out here." "To remind me," he said. "Remind you of what?" Silas looked at the rope in his hand, then around the stable. No clear footprints. Whoever it was had moved carefully. "That silence doesn't mean safety," he said. Mara leaned against the doorframe. "So is it still quiet tonight?" she asked. Silas looked out into the darkness. No lights anywhere but his own. "Tonight," he said, "it's still quiet." "And tomorrow morning?" Silas didn't answer right away. "No place is safe forever," he said at last. "Only places that haven't been named yet." Mara was silent. "And this place?" she asked. "It has no name," Silas said. He carried the rope outside. He didn't burn it, didn't throw it away. He placed it into a wooden crate and closed the lid. Mara watched him. "Aren't you afraid?" she asked. Silas turned back to her. "Yes," he said. "But I don't pretend I don't see." Mara nodded slowly, as if that answer was enough. They went back inside. Silas lit another lamp. The light was weak, but it was enough. "Sleep," he said. "And you?" she asked. "I'll listen." Mara lay down. This time, she closed her eyes. Outside, the wind slipped through the stable. The beam stood empty, but the message remained. Morning came fast and without mercy, as if the night before had never existed. The sun climbed high in just a few breaths, flooding the dry grass with light, stripping away everything the darkness had hidden. There was no kindness in that light. It didn't ask questions. It only exposed. Silas tied the horse earlier than usual. His movements were practiced and clean, not rushed, but without hesitation. He moved like a man who had already decided, now only finishing what remained. Mara stepped onto the porch. His old coat was draped over her shoulders, larger than necessary. One hand rested on her belly, the other held the edge of the coat closed. She didn't ask where they were going. She asked only one thing. "Are you sure?" Silas tightened the reins. "No," he said, "but I'm going." They entered town just as the shops were opening. Dust lifted lightly beneath the wheels. A broom scraped across a porch with a dry hiss. In the blacksmith's forge, metal struck metal, sharp and bare. People looked, not staring, just enough to know something was happening. Silas stopped the wagon in front of the telegraph office. "Sit here," he said. "Don't get down." Mara nodded. Inside, the air smelled of ink and warm metal. The telegraph operator hadn't looked up yet. "Send this to Sheriff Boone Hart," Silas said. "Signed with my name, and a woman needs to hear it." The man paused. "What's it about?" "A rope," Silas said, "and paperwork." Outside, Boots approached, slow, deliberate. Mara saw them before Silas stepped back out. Edgar Henson stood in the middle of the street. Clean shirt, new hat, a calm face worn by a man arriving to collect something he believed already belonged to him. Beside him was Deputy Clay Weller, one hand near his belt, eyes sweeping the area, practiced at letting a crowd part on its own before he spoke. Edgar smiled first. "Silas Crow," he said, "you've made the town busy early." Silas stepped down from the wagon. He didn't shield Mara. He didn't move away from her either. "Mr. Henson," Silas replied, "I wasn't expecting a polite visit." Edgar pulled out a neatly folded sheet of paper. Smooth, clean. "A writ," he said, "to bring my wife home." Clay Weller cleared his throat. "Don't make this hard," Clay said. "The paperwork's valid." A few people stopped sweeping. A few leaned against porch posts. No one stepped forward. No one walked away. Mara spoke, low but steady. "I'm not going." Edgar didn't look at her. He looked at Silas. "You heard her," Edgar said. "Women say all kinds of things when they're upset." A woman whispered behind them, "There are marks." Another answered softly, "Marks are enough." Silas held out his hand. "Let me see it." Edgar handed it over without hesitation. Silas read. Slowly. His face didn't change. "You know that paper's enough to drag her back," Edgar said. "And you know people trust paper more than what they see." Clay took half a step forward. "Keep it calm," Clay said, "before it turns loud." Mara gripped the edge of the wagon. "Don't," she said. "Don't make this bigger." Silas didn't look at her. He looked at the faces standing at the edge of the decision. Familiar faces. Faces that would later tell this story in whatever way let them sleep at night. Silas unholstered his gun. Not fast, not angry. Metal clicked, dry and unmistakable as the hammer locked back. Clay stiffened. "Silas," Clay said. "Don't." Silas raised the gun. He didn't aim at anyone. He fired. The shot tore the morning open. Birds scattered. Horses jerked at their reins. A few people cried out on instinct. Then silence. A silence so complete you could hear the shell casing roll across the dirt. Silas lowered the gun and reloaded. "I don't shoot people," he said. "I shoot so people stop." His gaze swept the crowd. "Paper doesn't feel pain," Silas continued. "People do." Edgar's smile vanished. His jaw tightened. "You just made everything worse," he said. "No," Silas replied. "I slowed it down." Clay wet his lips. "Sheriff Hart is on his way," Silas said. "The wire's already sent." The crowd shifted. Some turned away. Some stayed, as if leaving now would mean admitting they'd chosen wrong. Mara stepped down from the wagon. No one stopped her. She stood beside Silas, not holding his hand, just standing. "I'm not property," she said, and I'm not paper." No one answered. Edgar folded the writ sharply. "We'll talk again," he said, "under a roof that respects the law." Silas nodded. "In the light," he said. Edgar turned away. Clay followed. Not fast, not triumphant. The crowd thinned, like fog burned off by the sun. Mara let out a breath. "You didn't have to fire," she said. "I did," Silas replied. "They needed to hear it." "What happens now?" she asked. Silas looked toward the road leading out of town. "Now," he said, "the paper has stepped into the light." The town didn't talk much about the gunshot. The sound had been too clean, too final. It left no room for long arguments. The town took it about paperwork. Who held it? Who signed it? Who dared not let go? Midday sun fell straight onto the wooden porches, making the dust sparkle like ground metal. The hammer in the forge struck in a steady, heavy rhythm, the heartbeat of a place long used to violence, but rarely willing to call it by its name. Silas didn't stay in the square. He led Mara behind the blacksmith shop, where the smell of hot iron drowned out curiosity. Back there, whispers didn't carry as far, and if they did, the sound of steel swallowed them whole. "You shouldn't have done that," Mara said. "They won't forget." Silas stopped, his back to the town. "They don't need to forget," he said. "They just need to remember it right." Someone was waiting in the narrow alley. Thin, young. Hat pulled too low over his brow. Luke Avery. He didn't step out right away, as if being seen alone might be enough to bring everything down. Silas had spotted him before he spoke. "You're not here out of curiosity," Silas said. Luke swallowed. "I don't want to be seen," he said. "Then talk fast." Luke glanced around. "I saw Edgar," he said, "the other day at the rope shop." Silas didn't ask how Luke knew. "When?" he asked. "Morning," Luke said. "Early. I was sweeping. He didn't buy ranch rope, new rope, clean, asked for load bearing." Mara's hand tightened at her side. "He paid cash," Luke went on. "Didn't give a name, but I remember the boots." "Boots?" Silas asked. Luke nodded. "Right heel," he said. "Chipped. Like something took a bite out of it. I noticed because he dragged that foot a little when he had turned." Silas said nothing. In his mind, the image of that chipped heel pressed into dry dirt came back sharper than any face. "Have you told anyone else?" he asked. Luke shook his head. "If I talk," he said, "I lose my job." Silas gave a small nod. "You've said enough," he said. "And you won't say it again." Luke looked up. "Did I do the right thing?" Silas met his eyes. "You did a human thing," he said. Luke walked away quickly. He didn't look back. Silas stood there a moment longer. The hammer kept its steady beat. "We need the ledger," he said. Mara understood immediately. No explanation needed. Mrs. Calder's shop was cool and dim, as if even the light had to ask permission to enter. She stood behind the counter, one hand resting on a thick ledger, as if it might run if she didn't hold it down. "Silas," she said, "if you're here to ask questions, I'm busy." "I'm here to ask for the truth," Silas said. "That's not for sale," she replied. "But you keep it," he said. "In the book." Mrs. Calder looked at him, then at Mara. "You're dragging me into this," she said. "No," Silas said. "It already dragged you in." She let out a slow breath. "Edgar didn't sign," she said, "but the rope has a batch number, a mark." She opened the ledger. Pages whispered against each other. Her finger stopped. "Here," she said, 3 days ago, morning delivery, 1 coil. There's a note added later. Not my handwriting." Silas leaned closer. "You kept the delivery slip?" he asked. She hesitated longer this time. "Yes," she said. "I don't like anyone altering my books." She pulled out a thin sheet of paper. The ink was faint, but clear. "This batch," she said, "sold only once." Silas folded the paper. "Thank you. You know the price of this," she said. "Yes," Silas replied. "It means I don't buy from you anymore." She gave a dry laugh. "I sell salt," she said, "not peace of mind." They left town with the sun already high. They smelled it before they saw it. Not a big fire, just enough to say, "I was here." One corner of Silas's hay shed was scorched, boards blackened, hay still smouldering. The fire had been set carefully, like lighting a cigarette. Mara stopped short. "They're forcing you," she said, "to choose." Silas stepped forward and crushed the embers under his boot, unhurried. "Choose what?" he asked. "Me," Mara said. "Or the ranch." Silas straightened, looked at the shed, the house, the land, then at her. "They think I'm choosing," he said. "But I'm opening." "Opening what?" Silas took out the papers, the delivery slip, Luke's words, the memory of the chipped heel. "Everything," he said, "into the light." Mara shook her head. "They'll make it worse." "Yes," Silas said, "but only in the dark." He looked at the dying ash. "Tomorrow," he said. "Court, ledger, witnesses, rope, boots." Mara looked at him. "And if they burn it all?" Silas met her gaze. "Then it only gets clearer," he said. "Truth doesn't burn." Night fell. The hayshed still smelled of smoke, but inside the house, the papers lay flat on the table. They were no longer silent. The truth had found its voice. The town's court had no high dais like a church pulpit, just a few worn stone steps, so low that anyone standing on them couldn't look down without being looked back at. The stone had been smoothed by years of boots, by people who didn't come seeking fairness, only to make sure they weren't the ones who lost. Morning light cut across the square at an angle. The wind carried dust, old wood, and the sweat of people who'd arrived earlier than necessary. They gathered, not for the law, but for the moment. The moment someone might be pushed out of their place. Edgar stood at the foot of the steps, coat neat, face calm. In his hands, a stack of carefully folded papers held like a charm, something he believed could block every stare. Mara stood beside Silas. They didn't hold hands. They just stood. The space between them was close enough to keep others from stepping in, and clear enough to show this wasn't protection. It was a choice to stand together. Sheriff Boone Hart hadn't arrived yet. Deputy Clay Weller lingered near the courthouse door, one hand at his belt, eyes sweeping the square, trying to read which way the wind might turn. Edgar stepped forward half a pace. "End this," he said loudly, in the familiar tone of a man used to being obeyed. "My wife needs to come home." A few heads nodded. The papers were raised. The red seal caught the light. Mara said nothing. Edgar turned and took her hand. Not tight, not rough, just firm enough to claim ownership. Mara didn't scream, didn't pull away at once. She stood still. The square held its breath. Silas stepped forward. No shoving, no struggle. He simply placed his hand over Edgar's wrist. "Let go," Silas said quietly. Edgar gave a thin smile. "You don't have the authority." Silas removed his hand, slowly, one finger at a time, like peeling something filthy off skin. Edgar stepped back half a pace, more surprised than hurt. "Don't make this worse," he said. "Everyone's watching." Mara stepped forward. No one needed to move aside. The crowd did it on its own. She looked at Edgar, not angry, not shaking. "You're not ashamed of me," she said. Her voice wasn't loud, but the square heard it. "You're ashamed of yourself." Edgar's mouth twitched. "She's rambling." Mara didn't turn away. "I am not what you're ashamed of." The words fell, not heavy, but deep. A woman turned her face away. A man lowered his papers. The wind shifted. Edgar shook his head. "She's not well," he said. "The child's confused her." "No," an old voice said. "I heard her just fine." Another voice followed. "She's standing straighter than he is." Clay Weller looked around and realized the eyes were no longer on him. Hoofbeats sounded. Sheriff Boone Hart rode into the square, not hurried, not showy. He stopped before the stone steps and took in the scene like a man practiced in reading silence. "Take your hand off her," the sheriff said. Edgar turned. "Sheriff, I have an order." "Yes," Boone Hart said, "and I have eyes." He looked at Mara. "Do you want to go with him?" Mara shook her head. No hesitation. "No," the sheriff nodded. "That's enough." Edgar's face flushed. The law isn't a rope," the sheriff said. "You don't get to use it to tie people where you want." He turned to Clay. "Deputy," he said, "what do you see?" Clay opened his mouth, then closed it. "I see a woman saying no." The sheriff nodded. "Then you're seeing right." Edgar took another step back. The papers in his hands began to tremble. "This isn't over," he said. The sheriff stepped down one stone step. "It's just beginning," he said. "Not ending." Two of the sheriff's men stepped forward. No grabbing, no cuffs. Just close enough for Edgar to understand. The crowd didn't cheer. They didn't need to. They had already changed where they stood. Mara let out a breath. Silas stood beside her. He said nothing. The court didn't need a raised platform. It only needed the truth standing in the right place. The sound of metal closing wasn't loud, just two iron rings meeting. Dry, cold, final. No echo lingered. Still, in the quiet of morning, it was enough for everyone to hear. Edgar Henson didn't resist. He stood straight, adjusted his collar before the cuffs closed around his wrists, as if he was still curating his image to the very end. "No need," he said, as the deputy stepped closer. "I can walk on my own." Sheriff Boone Hart read the name, his voice steady. No emphasis, no swallowed words. Edgar Henson. Charges: coercion, unlawful confinement, witness intimidation, destruction of property. Edgar let out a small laugh. "Sounds like a lot for a family matter." The sheriff didn't look at him. "The law doesn't call it a family matter." Edgar turned his head, glanced toward Mara. She didn't look away. But she didn't return the look either. "You'll regret this," Edgar said. "Out there, people don't remember who the victim was. They remember who caused trouble." Mara spoke. Her voice was level, not raised. "I remember that I'm still standing." Edgar pressed his lips together. He said nothing more. The deputies led him away. No one in the crowd stepped forward. No whistles, no applause, only the sound of boots fading across stone. The sheriff turned back. "Clay Weller." Deputy Clay stiffened. "Present," he answered. "You're staying," the sheriff said. "We have some questions." Clay nodded. "Yes, Sheriff." A woman in the crowd whispered. "And the judge?" The name passed through the square, soft but clear. "Whitcomb." The sheriff looked toward the courthouse. The door was closed, the curtains drawn. "No one stands above this," he said. "Some just haven't stepped down yet." No one asked anything else. The crowd began to disperse, not from disappointment, but because there was no longer a reason to stay. Mara remained where she was, one hand resting on her belly. "So, is it over?" she asked. The sheriff looked at her. "It's begun," he said. "The rest takes time." "Time," Mara repeated. "That's rarely on a woman's side." The sheriff gave a small nod. "But today," he said, "it wasn't on the side of the one holding the rope." Silas stepped forward half a pace. "May we go?" The sheriff looked at him. "You don't owe this town anything anymore." Silas nodded. They turned away. No one called after them. The dirt road leading out of the square was scarred with old wagon ruts. Mara walked slowly. "I don't feel lighter," she said. "I thought I would." Silas didn't look at her. "People only feel light," he said, "when they're allowed to be forgotten. You won't be. So how long do I carry this? Until it stops carrying you." Mara fell quiet. They walked a little farther. "If I stay," she said, "people will only see me through this story." Silas stopped. "It's like that everywhere," he said. "The difference is whether a place lets you live beyond it." Mara looked at him. "You're not promising anything," she said. "I know." Silas nodded. "I'm not good at promises." He looked toward the distance. A low wooden fence, an old barn, no rope hanging there. "If you want a place where your child doesn't inherit fear," he stopped. Not because he lacked words, but because he didn't need them. Mara looked at him for a long time. Then she nodded. Just once. No tears, no thanks. They kept walking. Behind them, the town slipped back into its old rhythm. Doors opened. Bells rang. People spoke about other things. This story wasn't told often. It wasn't neat. It wasn't clean. But there are children who grow up never learning what a rope is for, and that is enough.